He was a man carved from violence and ice, Seoul's most feared underworld king who'd been told by every doctor that his body was broken beyond repair, sterile and empty, a legacy that would die with him. But when a 5-year-old girl with tear-streaked cheeks grabbed his hand in a hospital corridor and whispered, "Daddy?" Something impossible cracked open in his chest. She wasn't his. She couldn't be. Yet when her eyes, dark and desperate, looked up at him like he was salvation itself, Kang Min-ho felt his dead heart beat for the first time in 10 years. Welcome to K-Fairy Tales Stories, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. The girl's grip tightened on his fingers. Behind her, nurses rushed past with a gurney. The emergency room chaos swirled around them like a storm, but Min-ho couldn't move. He stood frozen as this child, this stranger, clung to him, like he was the only solid thing in her collapsing world. "I'm not your father," he said, his voice rougher than intended. The words felt wrong leaving his mouth. "Please don't leave me," she whispered. Her bottom lip trembled. Everyone leaves. Something ancient and protective roared to life inside him. Min-ho had killed men for looking at him wrong. He'd built an empire from blood and fear. But this child's tears dismantled him faster than any bullet ever could. A nurse approached, clipboard in hand. "Sir, are you with the patient?" "What patient?" The question came out sharper than he meant. "The woman who was brought in from the car accident. She listed you as emergency contact." The nurse's eyes narrowed. "You're Kang Min-ho?" He wasn't. But before he could correct her, the little girl squeezed his hand tighter. "Mama said you'd come. She said you always keep promises." Min-ho's mind raced. This was a mistake. A case of mistaken identity. He should walk away, let the hospital sort out their confusion. But when he looked down at those desperate eyes, he found himself nodding. "Where is she?" he heard himself ask. The nurse led them through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and fear. The girl's hand never left his. She was small, fragile, wearing a yellow dress with dirt stains and a butterfly clip in her hair that hung crooked. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. "What's your name?" Min-ho asked as they walked. "Sua," she said quietly. "Mama calls me her sunshine." They reached a room where machines beeped in steady rhythm. On the bed lay a woman, unconscious, her face partially hidden by bandages. But even through the injuries, Min-ho could see she was beautiful. Curves that spoke of strength and softness, skin like warm honey, natural hair that caught the fluorescent light even in its disheveled state. "The doctor will be in shortly," the nurse said. "She's stable but hasn't regained consciousness. Head trauma from the impact." Sua climbed into the chair beside the bed and took her mother's hand. "Mama, Daddy's here like you said." "Wake up now," Min-ho's chest constricted. He should tell them. Should explain that he wasn't this child's father, that he'd never seen this woman before in his life. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way Sua looked at him with such absolute faith. Maybe it was the monitor's steady beep that said this woman's life hung by threads. Maybe it was just that for the first time in a decade, someone looked at him and saw safety instead of danger. "I'll make some calls," he said, pulling out his phone. Within minutes, he'd arranged for the best doctors in Seoul to consult on the case. Money talked, and Min-ho had more than most nations. The next morning brought answers and more questions. The woman's name was Mira Ease, 32 years old, Nigerian immigrant who'd been living in Seoul for 6 years. Single mother, no family in Korea. The accident report showed she'd swerved to avoid hitting a child who'd run into the street, losing control of her vehicle in the process. "Heroic," the police officer said. "Saved the kid's life. Shame about her injuries, though." Min-ho stood at Mira's bedside, watching her chest rise and fall. Sua had finally fallen asleep in his arms after fighting exhaustion for hours. The weight of her small body felt foreign and terrifying. He'd never held a child before, never wanted to. "Why did you list me as emergency contact?" he murmured to the unconscious woman. "Who are you?" His phone buzzed. "Jung Tae-yoon, his second in command." "Boss, where are you?" "We have the meeting with the Busan Syndicate in an hour." Min-ho looked at the sleeping child in his arms, then at the woman fighting for life on the hospital bed. "Cancel it." Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, "You've never canceled a territorial meeting." "I'm canceling this one." Min-ho's tone left no room for argument. "Reschedule for next week. Send my apologies and a gift. Something expensive enough to prevent offense. Boss, are you okay?" "This isn't like you." No, it wasn't. Min-ho had built his reputation on being unmovable, unshakable, utterly focused on business. But that was before a little girl called him daddy and looked at him like he hung the moon. "I'm fine," he said. "Just handle it." He ended the call before Taeyun could question further. Sua stirred in his arms, mumbling something about butterflies. Minho found himself smoothing her hair back, a gesture so natural it shocked him. 3 days passed. Mira remained unconscious. Minho remained at the hospital, conducting business from the uncomfortable chair beside her bed. His men brought files, he signed contracts. He made decisions that moved millions of won, but his attention kept drifting to the woman who'd somehow placed her daughter's fate in his hands. Sua talked constantly when she was awake. About her mother's cooking, about the stories Mira told her before bed, about the butterfly garden they'd visited last month. She talked like if she filled the silence, her mother would wake up to join the conversation. "Mama says you're the strongest man in the world," Sua announced on the 4th day, coloring at the small table Minho's assistant had brought in. "She says you can fix anything." Minho's hands stilled on his laptop. "When did she tell you that?" "Lots of times. When I was scared, she'd say Daddy would come and make everything better." Sua looked up. Crayon paused mid-stroke. "She was right, you did come." The weight of this child's faith was crushing. Minho had done terrible things in his life, built his empire on fear and blood. He wasn't anyone's hero, certainly not a little girl's father figure. But Sua didn't know that. She saw him through her mother's eyes, whatever those eyes had seen when they looked at him. That evening, Minho's carefully constructed world collided with his hidden one. Lee Ji-hyun, a rival syndicate leader, arrived at the hospital for unrelated business. Their eyes met in the corridor, and Ji-hyun's expression shifted from surprise to calculation. Kang Minho in a hospital. Playing the Good Samaritan? Ji-hyun's smile was sharp. "Or is this personal? None of your concern." Minho's voice carried the weight of threat. "Everything in Seoul is my concern." Ji-hyun glanced toward Mira's room where Sua's laughter drifted out. "Especially when it involves you developing attachments." "Attachments are weaknesses, Minho. We both know what happens to weaknesses in our world." The threat was clear. Minho moved between Ji-hyun and the doorway, his body language shifting into something predatory. "Touch them, and I'll burn your operation to ash. Your family, your businesses, everything you've built. I'll make it so thorough that history will forget you existed." "Protective already?" Ji-hyun's eyebrows rose. "How fascinating. I thought you were sterile. Incapable of fathering children, yet here you are, playing daddy to some woman's kid. My personal life isn't your business. It is when it affects the balance of power. You've been distracted, Minho. Meetings canceled, decisions delayed. People are noticing." Ji-hyun leaned closer. "Be careful. Sentiment is a luxury men like us can't afford." After Ji-hyun left, Minho stood in the corridor, his hands clenched into fists. Every instinct screamed at him to walk away, to let social services handle Sua's placement, to return to his world where emotions were weapons and attachments were fatal. But when he turned and saw Sua through the window, arranging flowers in a vase for when her mother woke up, he knew walking away was impossible. He'd been claimed by a 5-year-old's unwavering faith, and somehow against all logic he didn't want to break free. That night Mira woke up. Minho was reviewing security protocols when he heard the change in her breathing. His head snapped up as her eyes fluttered open, confusion clouding their dark depths. "Sua," she whispered, her voice raw. "She's fine, sleeping in the next room." Minho moved closer, his heart hammering in a way that had nothing to do with danger. Up close, even bandaged and bruised, she was stunning. "You've been unconscious for 4 days. Mira's eyes focused on him, and something flickered in their depths. "Recognition, fear, hope? You came. You listed me as your emergency contact," he said carefully. "But I think there's been a mistake. We've never met. No mistake." Her hand reached for his, trembling. "I knew you'd come if she needed you. You always keep your promises." "What promises? I don't know you." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I know you don't remember. Why would you? It was years ago. But you saved my life once, in Lagos. You were there on business and I was caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. You got me out, told me if I ever needed anything to call." She squeezed his hand. "I kept the card you gave me, memorized the number. I never thought I'd actually need it until..." Minho's mind raced back. 6 years ago, he'd been in Lagos negotiating with a local crime lord. There had been gunfire, chaos. He vaguely remembered pulling a woman from the crossfire, getting her to safety. He'd given her a contact card, a gesture he'd made dozens of times, never expecting anyone to actually use it. "That was you?" "That was me. Pregnant, terrified, alone in a foreign country." Mira's voice strengthened. "You saved us both. When I moved to Seoul, I told Suah stories about the strong man who would always protect us if we needed him. I never meant to burden you with that promise. But when the accident happened, when I was losing consciousness, your name was the only one I could remember. The room felt too small suddenly, the air too thin. Minho had saved countless people over the years, most of them pawns in larger games. But this woman had built a mythology around one moment of mercy, had raised her daughter to believe in him, like he was some kind of hero. Suah called me Daddy, he said, his voice rough. Mira's eyes widened. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I told her stories, but I never meant for her to... I'll explain to her. I'll make sure she understands you're not... She thinks I am. Minho interrupted. And she's been through enough trauma without having that fantasy destroyed. So what are you suggesting? He didn't know. This was insane. He was a crime lord, a man with enemies who would use any weakness against him. Taking responsibility for this woman and her child was strategically foolish, emotionally dangerous, and completely illogical. I'm suggesting, he heard himself say, that we figure this out together. You're alone in soul. You have no family support. Your daughter believes I'm her father. And apparently, I owe you a debt from 6 years ago. He met her eyes. Let me help. Help how? However you need. Medical bills, housing, security. His jaw tightened. Ji-hyun knows about you now. That makes you a target. You'll need protection. Who's Ji-hyun? Someone you don't want to meet. Minho stood, needing distance from the intensity in her eyes. Rest. We'll talk more when you're stronger. But before he could leave, Mira's hand caught his sleeve. Why would you do this? You don't know us. We're nothing to you. Minho looked down at where her fingers gripped his expensive suit. Such a small hand, trembling with effort, yet holding him in place more effectively than any chain. You're not nothing, he said quietly. Not anymore. The following week transformed Minho's world. He moved Mira and Suah into one of his secure properties, a penthouse with views of the Han River and security systems that rivaled military installations. His men were under strict orders to protect them with their lives. Suah adapted instantly, running through rooms that echoed with her laughter. Mira was more reserved, watching Minho with eyes that held too many questions and not enough trust. You don't have to do this, she said one evening while Suah slept. They sat in his study, the city glittering below them like scattered diamonds. We can manage on our own. Can you? Minho's gaze was steady. You were driving a 10-year-old car with faulty brakes, living in an apartment building with broken security cameras, working 2 jobs to make rent. He'd had his people investigate thoroughly. That's not managing, that's surviving. We were fine. You nearly died saving a stranger's child. Suah could have ended up in the system. His voice hardened. That's not fine. Mira's eyes flashed with something that looked like anger mixed with pain. So what? You're going to play savior? Buy us a nice cage and feel good about your charity? Minho crossed the space between them in 3 strides. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not in his own home. But something about Mira's defiance made his blood heat in ways that had nothing to do with anger. This isn't charity, he said, his voice low and dangerous. This is me keeping a promise. This is me protecting what's mine. We're not yours, aren't you? He was close enough to smell her scent, something warm and sweet that made him think of home, even though he'd never had one. Suah calls me Daddy. You put my name on emergency forms. You told your daughter I'd come save her. That makes you mine, whether you want it or not. Mira stood her ground, her chin lifted in defiance. I'm not some damsel who needs rescuing. No, you're a woman who drove herself into a pole saving a stranger's kid. A woman who works herself to exhaustion providing for her daughter. A woman who's too proud to accept help, even when she desperately needs it. Minho's hand came up, almost touching her cheek before he stopped himself. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you dangerous. Dangerous how? Because you make me want to be better than I am. The confession escaped before he could stop it. Because your daughter looks at me like I'm a hero instead of a monster. Because when you smile, which isn't often enough, I can't breathe properly. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Mira's breath caught, her eyes widening. For a moment, Minho thought she might close the distance, might test the attraction that hummed between them like electricity. Then Suah's voice called out from her room. Mama, bad dream. The moment shattered. Mira stepped back, her professional mask sliding into place. I should go to her. Minho watched her leave, his hands clenched into fists. This was a complication he couldn't afford. He couldn't develop feelings for this woman. She was under his protection, nothing more. Anything else would be disaster. But as he stood alone in his study, listening to Mira's soft voice soothing her daughter, Minho knew he was lying to himself. He'd been lost the moment Sua grabbed his hand in that hospital corridor. And seeing Mira every day, watching her move through his space like she belonged there, was systematically destroying every wall he'd built around his damaged heart. By the end of the month, they'd fallen into a routine that felt dangerously like family. Sua would wake Minho each morning by climbing into his bed, chattering about dreams. Mira would make breakfast, her cooking filling the penthouse with scents that made it feel lived in, rather than just occupied. Minho would handle business from home more often than not, finding excuses to be present. His men noticed the change. Taeyun confronted him after a meeting ran shorter than usual. "You're different, boss, softer. Careful how you speak to me," Minho warned. "I'm serious. The old you would have handled the Inshin situation with violence. Instead, you negotiated, you compromised." Taeyun's expression was concerned. "People are talking. They think you're losing your edge. Let them talk. Minho, these people will see any weakness as an opportunity to strike. The woman and the kid, they're making you vulnerable." Minho's hand shot out, gripping Taeyun's collar and slamming him against the wall. "They're not a weakness, they're off limits. Anyone who touches them answers to me with their life. Spread that message through every channel we have." After Taeyun left, properly chastened, Minho stood at his office window overlooking the city he'd conquered. Taeyun was right, he was changing. The ruthless calculation that had built his empire was being eroded by Sua's giggles and Mira's rare smiles. And God help him, he didn't want to stop the erosion. That evening, everything shifted. Minho took Mira and Sua to dinner at an exclusive restaurant he owned. It was meant to be simple, a thank you for how well they'd adapted to their new circumstances. But when they entered, Minho saw Ji-hyun dining with associates across the room. Their eyes met. Ji-hyun's smile was predatory. "Stay close," Minho murmured to Mira, his hand finding the small of her back. The contact sent electricity through both of them. They were seated at the best table, Sua delighting in the fancy surroundings. But Minho couldn't relax. He tracked Ji-hyun's movements, noting when the man stood and began moving toward their table. "Kang Minho," Ji-hyun said smoothly. "What a pleasant surprise. And this must be the family I've heard so much about." Sua looked up from her coloring. "Hi, I'm Sua." "That's my daddy." Ji-hyun's smile sharpened. "Is that so? How wonderful. And you must be the mother." His eyes raked over Mira with an assessment that made Minho's blood boil. "Quite beautiful, I can see the appeal." "Ji-hyun," Minho's voice carried warning. "Walk away. I'm just being friendly. Surely you wouldn't deny me the chance to meet your new family." Ji-hyun's attention fixed on Mira. "Tell me, do you know what your husband does for a living?" "He's a businessman," Mira said carefully. "Is that what he told you? How diplomatic." Ji-hyun leaned closer. "Did he mention the bodies, the blood? The empire built on fear?" Minho stood, his chair scraping against marble. "Last warning, or what? You'll start a war in front of your daughter?" Ji-hyun's eyes glittered with malice. "We both know you won't. That's your new weakness, Minho. You've developed a conscience. What happened next was pure instinct." Ji-hyun's hand moved toward Mira's shoulder, a gesture meant to provoke. Minho's response was immediate and brutal. He caught Ji-hyun's wrist, twisted it at an angle that brought the man to his knees, and leaned down to whisper words that no one else could hear. "Touch her again, and I'll feed you to your own dogs. This is your only warning." He released Ji-hyun and returned to his seat, his expression calm despite the violence that had just occurred. The restaurant had gone silent, all eyes on their table. "Daddy?" Sua's voice was small. "Are you okay?" Minho's fury evaporated instantly. He smoothed Sua's hair back, his touch gentle. "I'm fine, sunshine, just handling some business." But Mira was watching him with new eyes. She'd seen something in that moment, something dark and dangerous that confirmed everything Ji-hyun had implied. When they returned home later, she put Sua to bed and then found Minho on the terrace, staring out at the city. "Tell me the truth," she said quietly. "What are you?" Minho didn't turn around. "What do you think I am?" "I think you're exactly what that man said. I think you're dangerous. I think we're living in a world I don't understand with a man I don't know." Now he turned, and the rawness in his expression made her breath catch. "You want the truth? Fine. I'm the head of Seoul's largest criminal organization. I control territory from Busan to the DMZ. I've killed men. I've destroyed families. I'm everything your instincts are telling you to run from." Mira's hands trembled, but she didn't move. "Then why are we still alive? If you're this monster, why protect us?" "Because you're different." He crossed to her, stopping just short of touching. Because your daughter makes me want to be better. Because when I look at you, I don't see just another obligation. I see something I didn't think existed anymore. What? Home. The word hung between them like a confession. Mira's eyes searched his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, but all she found was brutal honesty, wrapped in vulnerability, that this powerful man clearly wasn't used to showing. You can't mean that, she whispered. I've never meant anything more. Minho's hand finally made contact, cupping her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything she'd just learned about him. I know what I am. I know what I've done. But Mira, I swear on everything I have that I will never hurt you or Sua. You're the only good thing in my life. This is insane, she breathed. But she wasn't pulling away. I should take Sua and disappear. Go somewhere you can't find us. You could try. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But I'd find you, I'd always find you. Not to hurt you, but because losing you now would destroy what's left of my humanity. Minho? He kissed her then, cutting off whatever protest she'd been about to make. It was claiming and desperate, filled with weeks of tension and longing neither of them had acknowledged. Mira's hands fisted in his shirt, torn between pushing him away and pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Minho rested his forehead against hers. Tell me to stop. Tell me you don't feel this too, and I'll back away. I'll maintain distance, be nothing more than a guardian. But don't lie to me. Mira's response was to kiss him again, pouring 6 years of gratitude, weeks of growing attraction, and a longing she'd been fighting into the contact. Minho lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her toward his bedroom. Sua, Mira gasped against his mouth. Sleeping. My room is soundproofed. He kicked the door closed behind them. And if you're about to change your mind, do it now, because once I have you, I'm never letting go. Don't let go, she whispered. Not tonight. What followed was heat and tenderness, urgency and reverence. Minho mapped every curve of her body like he was memorizing sacred text, whispering words in Korean that made her shiver despite not understanding them all. Mira gave herself over to sensation, to the feeling of being cherished by a man who'd probably never cherished anything in his life. Later, as dawn painted the sky in shades of gold, Mira traced the scars on Minho's chest. What changed? She asked quietly. What made you decide to be something other than what you were? A little girl called me Daddy. His hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. And her mother looked at me like I could be a hero instead of a villain. I wanted to be that man, the one you see when you look at me. I see both, Mira admitted. The dangerous one and the gentle one. I should be terrified. But you're not. No, I'm terrified of something else entirely. What? How much I'm starting to need you? She looked up at him. How much Sua already loves you. How devastating it will be when this ends. Minho's grip tightened. Who said it's ending? Men like you don't do forever with women like me. We're from different worlds. Then I'll burn my world down and build a new one. His voice was fierce, one where we fit, where Sua grows up safe and loved, where you never have to be afraid again. Mira wanted to believe him. But morning brought reality crashing back. When she woke, Minho was gone, his side of the bed already cold. A note on the pillow said simply, business emergency. Stay inside, I'll be back by evening. But evening came and went with no word. Sua asked repeatedly where Daddy was. Mira tried to maintain normalcy, but anxiety clawed at her chest. By midnight, when Minho still hadn't returned or called, she knew something was wrong. Tae-yoon appeared at the door, his expression grim. Mrs. Mira, I need you and Sua to come with me. Now. What happened? Where's Minho? There's been a situation. The boss sent me to move you to a more secure location. He was already ushering them toward the elevator. We don't have time for questions. The safe house was a fortress disguised as a traditional Korean home in the mountains outside Seoul. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Mira's phone had no signal. Sua cried herself to sleep asking for her daddy. Tae-yoon finally explained in the early morning hours. Ji-hyun made his move, ambushed the boss and several of our men during a meeting. Minho is alive but injured. He's handling the fallout. But it's going to get worse before it gets better. How bad is worse? War. Tae-yoon's expression was haunted. Full territorial war. Every syndicate will have to choose sides. It's going to be bloody. I need to see him. That's exactly what Ji-hyun wants. He's using you as bait, trying to draw Minho out. The boss's orders were clear. Keep you and Sua safe at any cost. 3 days passed with no word. Mira felt like she was losing her mind. Sua withdrew, barely eating, clutching a photo of Minho that had been in his apartment. The little girl who'd been so bright and cheerful was fading into silence. On the fourth day, Mira made a decision. She found Taeyun in the security room. "Take me to him. I can't do that. Then I'll find him myself." Her voice was steel. "My daughter is shutting down. She thinks he's abandoned her. She needs to see him alive or she's going to break. If Jihyun captures you, then Minho will come. And isn't that what everyone wants anyway?" Mira met his eyes. "Stop treating me like I'm fragile. I survived Lagos before Minho showed up. I survived 6 years in Seoul alone with a child. I can survive whatever comes next, but only if I know he's alive." Taeyun studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Pack light. We leave in an hour." The warehouse where Minho had set up temporary operations was a stark contrast to his luxurious penthouse. Concrete floors, industrial lighting, and an atmosphere of controlled violence. Men with weapons stood at every entrance. Mira found Minho in a back office, bent over maps and documents. When he looked up and saw her, fury and relief warred across his features. "What the hell are you doing here?" He was beside her in seconds, hands checking her for injuries. "Taeyun, I told you to keep them safe." She made a convincing argument. Taeyun wisely stepped back. "Sua needs to see you," Mira said firmly. "She thinks you're dead. She's not eating, not sleeping. She needs her father." The word father broke something in Minho's expression. He looked past Mira to where Sua stood in the doorway, small and scared, and heartbreakingly hopeful. "Daddy?" The little girl's voice cracked. Minho crossed to her, scooping her up with visible effort. Mira noticed the way he moved, the stiffness that spoke of injury he was hiding. "I'm here, sunshine, I'm okay." "You left?" Sua sobbed into his shoulder. "Everyone leaves. Never again." He looked at Mira over Sua's head, his eyes holding a promise and a plea. "I swear it, never again." After Sua finally calmed, exhausted from crying, Minho settled her on a cot in a private room. Then he turned to Mira with an expression that mixed anger and awe. "You could have been killed coming here. So could you staying here." She gestured at the controlled chaos beyond the office door. "What are you doing, Minho? What's your plan?" "To end this." His voice was flat. Jihyun drew first blood. "Now I finish it." "By doing what? Starting a war that will consume everyone around you?" "By protecting what's mine." He moved closer, and she saw the exhaustion, the pain he was hiding, the weight of command bearing down on shoulders that were strong but not invincible. "I won't apologize for that. I'm not asking you to apologize." Mira's hand found his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady under her palm. "I'm asking you to be smart, to not throw your life away in some territorial pissing match. You think that's what this is?" Minho caught her hand, pressed it harder against his heart. "Jihyun threatened you and Sua, in front of me, in public. If I don't respond with overwhelming force, every other ambitious bastard in this city will think you're fair game. So this is about me? This is about the fact that I'd burn Seoul to the ground before I let anyone hurt you." The raw honesty in his voice made her shiver. "Both of you. You're not just under my protection anymore, Mira. You're in my heart. And I don't know how to not protect what's in my heart with everything I have." Mira pulled him down for a kiss that tasted like desperation and hope. "Then let me help. Stop pushing me away to some safe house. Let me be part of this. It's too dangerous. Life is dangerous. Love is dangerous," she met his eyes. "But I'm choosing it anyway. I'm choosing you, Minho, all of you, the monster and the man. So stop trying to protect me from yourself and let me stand beside you." Something broke in his expression, the last wall crumbling. "If something happens to you, it won't. Because you're the strongest man I know, and you don't fail when it matters." She smiled. "Plus, I'm pretty resilient myself." Minho kissed her again, deeper this time, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. "Marry me." Mira's breath caught. "What? Marry me, not because it's logical or safe. Because I love you. Because Sua deserves the family she believes we already are. Because I want to wake up every morning for the rest of my life and know you chose me despite everything I am." "Minho, this is insane!" "I know. Everything about us is insane. But answer me this, do you love me?" The truth rose up, undeniable. "Yes, God help me, yes." "Then marry me. Let me make it official. Let me give Sua my name. Give you my protection legally, not just criminally." His smile was crooked. "Let me be the man you believe I can be." Mira should have said no. Should have demanded time, clarity, sanity. Instead, she found herself nodding. "Yes, on one condition. Anything. End this war without more bloodshed. Find another way." Prove to me and Sua that the man we love is stronger than the monster everyone fears, studying her face. Then he turned to the maps on his desk, his expression shifting into something calculating. Taeyun, get me everything we have on Ji-hyun's operations. Financial records, territory maps, everything. We're going to dismantle him without firing another shot. Boss? You heard me. We're playing this smart. Minho looked at Mira. For my family. What followed was 2 weeks of intense strategy. Minho used every connection, every favor owed, every piece of leverage he'd accumulated over years of building his empire. He exposed Ji-hyun's financial crimes to authorities who couldn't be bought. He negotiated with rival syndicates, offering better terms than Ji-hyun ever had. He systematically dismantled Ji-hyun's power base without spilling a single drop of blood. Mira watched him work and saw the intelligence behind the violence, the strategic mind that had built his empire. This was a man who understood power in all its forms, not just the brutal kind. On the 15th day, Ji-hyun was arrested by federal authorities for money laundering and tax evasion. His syndicate collapsed overnight, his territory absorbed by Minho's organization and others. The war everyone predicted never materialized. You did it, Mira said that evening, watching the news report from Minho's penthouse. We did it. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her from behind. You gave me a reason to be better, to think beyond just crushing my enemies. I gave you nothing you didn't already have inside you. You gave me everything. He turned her to face him. So let's make this official. Marry me tomorrow, tonight. Right now, I don't care. Just say you'll be mine forever. The wedding was small, held in a traditional Korean ceremony with Soo-ah as flower girl. Minho's men attended, looking uncomfortable in formal clothes. Mira's few close friends from Seoul's immigrant community came, their eyes wide at the display of wealth and power. But what mattered was the way Minho looked at Mira as she walked toward him in a handbook that made her look like a queen. The way Soo-ah beamed, finally having the family she'd always believed existed. The way Minho's voice cracked when he made his vows. I promise to love you until my last breath. To protect you and Soo-ah with everything I am. To be worthy of the faith you've placed in me. His eyes were bright with emotion he didn't try to hide. Thank you for saving me. Mira's response was equally raw. Thank you for letting me. The celebration afterward was lavish, Minho sparing no expense. But the best moment came when they were finally alone in the penthouse, Soo-ah sleeping soundly in her room. Mrs. Kang, Minho murmured against Mira's neck as they swayed to music only they could hear. How does it feel? Like coming home, Mira whispered back. Like everything that happened, all the pain and fear, led me exactly where I needed to be. Even the car accident? Especially the car accident. Because it brought me to you. She pulled back to look at him. I love you, Minho. Every complicated, dangerous, beautiful part of you. He kissed her then, deep and claiming, carrying her toward their bedroom. Let me show you how much I love you back. The months that followed transformed them all. Minho gradually legitimized more of his business operations, using his criminal empire's resources to build legal enterprises. He was still feared, still powerful, but now he was also a husband and father. The combination made him even more formidable because now he had something worth protecting beyond just territory. Soo-ah thrived. She started at an exclusive international school, making friends, bringing home artwork that Minho displayed in his office. She called him Daddy without hesitation, and he answered to it like it was his true name. Mira opened a community center for immigrant families, using Minho's resources to create the support system she'd wished for when she first came to Seoul. She helped women like herself find their footing in a foreign country, gave them language classes, job training, safety. You're making me respectable, Minho teased one evening, watching her review center proposals. I'm making you happy, she corrected. There's a difference. You're right. He pulled her onto his lap. I've never been happier. Never thought I could be. Not even when you were Seoul's most feared crime lord. Especially not then. That was just power. This is purpose. His hand found her stomach, resting there with reverence. Speaking of which, how are you feeling? Mira smiled, placing her hand over his. Tired, emotional, craving foods that make no sense together. So the usual? The usual. She turned to face him fully. Are you ready to do this again? Be a father to another child? I was never ready the first time, Minho admitted. But I wouldn't change it for anything. Soo-ah gave me a reason to be better. You gave me the strength to actually become better. This baby, he kissed her softly. This baby is proof that even broken things can create something beautiful. You're not broken anymore. No, he agreed, pulling her closer. I'm healed, you healed me. 9 months later, in the same hospital where Minho first held Sua's hand, he held his newborn son for the first time. The baby was tiny, perfect, with Mira's features and Minho's dark eyes. What should we name him? Mira asked from the hospital bed, exhausted but glowing. Minho looked at the child in his arms, then at Sua, who was peering curiously at her baby brother. Hope, he said quietly. His name is Hope, because that's what you both gave me when I thought I was beyond saving. Sua wrinkled her nose. Hope is a weird name for a boy. Then what do you suggest, Sunshine? Minjae, Sua said confidently. It means bright and talented. And he should have part of your name because you're the best daddy ever. Minho's eyes grew bright. He pulled Sua close with his free arm. Minjae it is. Though I'm not sure about the best daddy ever part. I am, Mira said softly. She's absolutely right. The family of 4 sat together in that hospital room, Minho holding his son while Sua chattered about all the things she would teach her baby brother. Mira watched them, her heart so full it ached. 2 years ago, she'd been alone and struggling. Now she had a family, a purpose, and a love that defied every expectation. Minho had gone from Seoul's most feared crime lord to a man who changed diapers at 3 a.m. and attended school plays with genuine enthusiasm. What are you thinking about? Minho asked, catching her watching them. How grateful I am, Mira said honestly. That Sua grabbed your hand that day, that you didn't walk away, that you chose us despite every logical reason not to. Logic has nothing to do with love, Minho said. I learned that from a 5-year-old who decided I was her father and refused to accept any other reality. She saw what I could be before I saw it myself. And now look at you. Mira gestured to the scene before her. Seoul's most dangerous man, completely wrapped around his children's fingers. Best thing that ever happened to me? He leaned over to kiss her forehead. All of you, my redemption, my purpose, my everything. Outside, Seoul continued its endless motion, the city that had witnessed their unlikely love story unfolding. But inside that hospital room, time stood still for a family that shouldn't have existed, but somehow became exactly what each of them needed. Minho had thought he'd be childless, alone, nothing more than a feared name in Seoul's underworld. Instead, he'd found salvation in a little girl's unwavering faith, in a woman's courageous love, and in the family they'd built from impossible circumstances. And as he sat there holding his newborn son, while his daughter explained the rules of kindergarten, and his wife watched them with eyes full of love, Kang Min-ho understood something fundamental. He'd spent years building an empire of fear and power, but it meant nothing compared to this, to being daddy to children who loved him unconditionally, to being a husband to a woman who saw his darkness and chose him anyway. He'd been wrong about being sterile in more ways than one. His body had been broken, yes, but his soul had been even more damaged, until a chance encounter in a hospital corridor had given him something no amount of power ever could. A family, a purpose. A reason to wake up each morning and choose to be better than he was the day before. I love you, he whispered to Mira, the words still feeling new despite how often he said them. I love you too, she whispered back. My dangerous, devoted, impossible husband. And in that moment, with his family surrounding him, and the future stretching bright and hopeful ahead, Minho finally understood what it meant to be truly powerful, not through fear or territory or violence, but through love so fierce it could transform even the most broken soul into something beautiful. The end.